She doesn't deserve anything that comes her way. After Caitlin Clark's comments sparked a firestorm in women's basketball and other players openly minimized her importance, the NBA's condemnation of her has reached previously unheard of heights.
So, Caitlin Clark has gotten some backlash from some parts of the Times article. And whether it be people that wanted to use her to push a narrative clapping back at her, or not even clapping back, just turning on her, or whether it be WNBA owners, in one regard, Renee Montgomery refusing to say anything positive about Caitlin, and then another one basically saying that Caitlin Clark doesn't deserve anything she gets.
But when tennis great Chris Evert and Olympic athlete Gabby Thomas stepped into the ring, everything changed.
And we've now got, thankfully, some like big prominent athletes defending her.
If you've been watching women's basketball lately, you're aware that Caitlin Clark has been in the news a lot lately. However, this time, it's not because of her incredible three-point shooting or her record-breaking performances. Rather, it's about something far more contentious. You might be surprised to learn why these sports legends are standing up for the most talked-about player in college basketball, and it's wreaking havoc in the women's sports community.
So she asks Caitlin Clark about the comments I made, or the Twitter, or whatever, the tweet, and here's what happened.
Kelly, she was saying that you were apologizing for your white privilege and the fact that you wanted to uplift Black female athletes and make sure that they were getting the shine, kind of like your pioneers were getting the shine that they deserved. And I just want to know how you feel or how you respond to some of those criticisms.
I grew up a fan of this league from a very young age. Like, my favorite player was Maya Moore. Like, I know what this league was about. And like I said, like, it's only been around 25 plus years. So I know there's been so many amazing Black women that have been in this league, and continuing to uplift them, I think, is very important.
She's doing it again.
That's something I'm very aware of. I said, I feel like one of my best skills is just blocking things out. Like, I don't really, the only opinions I really care about are the people that I love.
That's actually smart, and she shouldn't be listening to her critics, but that's not going to stop those of us who have strong thoughts about her bending the knee from speaking out.
It all started with that Times article, you know, the one where Clark opened up about her journey and impact on the sport. Seems pretty straightforward, right? Well, that's where things got complicated. The response from certain WNBA figures, let's just say it wasn't exactly warm and fuzzy. Take Renee Montgomery, for instance. When asked about Clark's impact on the game, she did everything but acknowledge it. It was like watching someone try to dodge raindrops in a thunderstorm. Pretty much impossible, but she sure tried, and she wasn't alone. We had WNBA owners coming out of the woodwork, and one of them really took things to another level. This owner, and I'm paraphrasing here, basically suggested that Clark's success and recognition had more to do with her race than her actual talent. Let that sink in for a moment. We're talking about a player who's broken countless records, revolutionized the college game, and brought unprecedented attention to women's basketball, but apparently that's not enough for some people. But here's where things get interesting. Just when it appeared that the criticism was getting out of hand, assistance came from some unexpected sources. I mean, truly surprising when I say unexpected. We're discussing tennis greats from completely unrelated sports going to the ring to support Clark. First of all, for those of you who don't know, Chris Evert is a tennis legend. 18 Grand Slam titles at the end of the year, 3 titles. When Chris Evert speaks, people listen, and she undoubtedly had something to say about this situation. Several of her albums are still in print today.
She's one of the greatest tennis players of all time. She is somebody who has almost been as successful in the sport as Serena Williams. And she's there basically saying Caitlin Clark deserves this award because of her talent and contributions both on and off the court.
She never offered a token gesture of support, but instead came out strong, emphasizing what everyone should have known. Clark's remarkable talent and talents on and off the court merited her attention and successes. This was validation from one of the greatest athletes in history, not simply another voice in the throng. But the encouragement didn't stop there, as Olympic medalist and independent powerhouse Gabby Thomas joined in.
And you have got this, and I really, really like this response from Gabby Thomas, who is, again, she is an athlete who has spent time around Caitlin Clark, and she basically was calling out Riley Gaines, and this is Riley Gaines. No one was asking for Caitlin Clark to position herself as a right-wing hero. All she had to do was remain neutral.
Riley Gaines suggested that Clark should have remained impartial, but Thomas wasn't buying it. She touched on two significant topics that really went to the heart of this disagreement in her thoughtful and persuasive response.
And Gabby Thomas said, you don't just have to share your opinion on everything, just sit with it out. I don't really mind. That response is what it is. Caitlin Clark shouldn't need to apologize for being white, which is a comment. And I don't think she necessarily did that, but I can see how it read like that. And I will stand by that. Like, that was the first thing the way I read it initially. And Gabby Thomas says, agreed, nor should she apologize for acknowledging the POC, the people of color that came before her and play a significant role in building the league.
Clark shouldn't have to apologize for being herself. Thomas made clear at the outset. It's ridiculous, and Thomas called it out for what it was. Take a time to think about how some people seem to believe that being successful while being white is something for which you should apologize. Though some critics may have you believe that these two things are mutually contradictory, this is where Thomas really showed that she understood the situation and supported Clark's right to acknowledge the players of color who helped establish the league. As demonstrated by Clark, it is possible to achieve success and shine while simultaneously paying respect to those who came before you. Let's talk about a fascinating subject that has been, or isn't happening. Have you observed the lack of communication from some of Clark's closest supporters? Teammates like Kate Martin, Lexi Hull, and even her boyfriend Connor McCaffrey come to mind. Due to the fact that it is very clear that Clark herself wants this entire scenario to finish, their silence says a lot. All she has ever wanted is to play basketball at the highest level, and when you think about it, that may be the most powerful message of all. She doesn't want to be at the focus of a cultural argument. For a moment, let's examine the circumstances surrounding Lexi Brown. At first, she had doubts about Clark and was a Clark denier. However, after playing her twice, Brown's mindset changed significantly after watching Clark lose by 30 points in their second meeting and then drain consecutive 30-footers to end the game. Caitlin Clark is authentic. The fact that Brown has built a prosperous media career, particularly through her appearances on Gil's Arena, is what makes her support so captivating. She isn't bound by the same constraints as active players who might be worried about upending the existing quo, and she has less to lose by speaking her thoughts. People are analyzing every word of Clark's Times article in an effort to find hidden meanings or problematic undertones, but the issue is that they are so preoccupied with igniting controversy that they are neglecting the true impact Clark has had on the sport. It has been fascinating to watch how people have responded to all of this on social media. Now that we're talking about influence, let's talk about the figures. We're talking about someone who has radically changed the perception of women's basketball, not merely a gifted basketball player. The attendance records caused TV ratings to plummet through the roof. It's fascinating to note that the same individuals who are now attacking Clark were remarkably quiet when she was breaking records, selling out venues, making the top 10 every night at SportsCenter, and nailing those logo 3ES. At that moment, they were not talking about privilege. Since Gil's Arena has become a fascinating platform in this entire argument, let's take a moment to talk about it. Gilbert Arenas is a fascinating character who can simultaneously be the most intelligent and, let's say, most unpredictable person in the room. His show has developed into an unanticipated platform for open discussion about basketball, and their coverage of the Clark case tells us a lot about the attitudes of the broader basketball community towards this controversy. There's always a buzz when Cheryl swoops onto Gil's Arena. The intriguing thing is that, in spite of the contentious discussions and opposing points of view, there is a fundamental respect for Clark's achievements. The videos go viral, the fights get more intense, and people start to take sides. The disagreements center on everything else associated with her accomplishment rather than whether or not she is gifted. Now, let's talk about the topic of activism in sports, which has been boiling beneath the surface of this whole dispute. When Gabby Thomas backed Clark, she was attempting to convey that athletes should be free to choose their battles, despite the perception held by some that they must take a position on every social issue that comes up. It's fantastic if someone wants to be an activist like Natasha Cloud, but it's also acceptable if they want to focus just on their game. They have the right to support Trump like Sophie Cunningham or KLA Harris. The idea is that we shouldn't put athletes in boxes or make them adopt stances on topics they may not find interesting. Instead of retaliating against her critics or becoming involved in Twitter wars, Clark's handling of this whole scenario actually shows a lot about her character. She has continued to concentrate on her game and let her basketball do the talking. It speaks strongly, I think. It wasn't just a great moment when Clark dropped those back-to-back 30-footers against Brown's team. It was a statement that Clark was making. This is who I am. This is what I do. In all of this talk about race, recognition, and who should get what, we sometimes forget how incredibly talented Clark is. We're talking about someone who can pull up from the logo with the same confidence that most players have when shooting free throws. So let's take a moment to talk about that skill. No words or tweets were required. The kids are trying to shoot from way downtown, making no-look passes, and playing with a sense of fun and freedom that Clark has helped normalize if you attend to any ladies' basketball game these days. Ratings and ticket sales cannot quantify that influence, but this is where the discussion becomes very fascinating. She is reimagining the game, not merely playing it. She has a tremendous impact on the following generation. Some of her opponents have claimed that Clark's success somehow diminishes the achievements of her predecessors, but this is completely untrue. Clark acknowledges the pioneers of women's basketball either out of obligation or political correctness, because she understands that she is a member of a long-standing tradition. Think about the players who founded the WNBA, who played in half-empty stadiums, who worked second jobs to make ends meet, and who fought for every shred of recognition they were given. Instead of downplaying their contributions, Clark's accomplishment honors them. She is proof that the foundation they built is strong enough to support the next generation and that their efforts were justified. Clark is scheduled to join the WNBA, so let's face it, the timing of this dispute is not coincidental. Some people seem almost desperate to create drama. Maybe they're doing it to garner attention, further their own agendas, or just can't believe that someone can be successful, privileged, and appreciative of their predecessors. In actuality, Clark will continue to have an impact on women's basketball for years to come because she is demonstrating that being great doesn't have to come with guilt, in addition to her exceptional skills and record-breaking accomplishments. She is also showing that you may push the limits of what is feasible in the present while yet honoring the past. Consider how the media environment is evolving. People like Lexi Brown are starting new careers and creating platforms where these conversations may occur in an open and sincere manner. The popularity of shows like Gil's Arena suggests that people want to talk about basketball, especially women's basketball, in an authentic and uninhibited way. In relation to the media, we should not overlook the coverage of this entire topic. Although it's far more complex than that, some media outlets have tried to present it as a simple black and white issue. It has to do with the evolution of women's sports, the relationship between opportunity and talent, generational changes, and time. Legendary sportsmen like Chris Evert and Gabby Thomas have shown Clark support, which is important because they understand what it's like to be at the top of your field, take criticism, and carry the weight of other people's expectations and biases. When Thomas maintains Clark's right to honor her forebears while simultaneously accepting accountability for her own accomplishments, when she asserts that excellence and gratitude don't have to clash, she is speaking from personal experience. You can still create your own path while respecting the paths others have already taken. The most amazing thing about all of this is how it reflects broader conversations occurring in the domains of society and sports. These conversations seem to be taking place most prominently in basketball right now, particularly in women's basketball, even though the question of who succeeds and under what conditions is not unique to basketball. As we conclude, it's critical to remember that criticism is inevitable for someone with Clark's level of talent and visibility, so this is likely not the last dispute involving her. But if we've learned anything from this, it's that she is backing from unexpected sources, including media figures, Olympic athletes, erstwhile skeptics, and tennis legends. It's incredible that despite the plethora of heated arguments, anger, and hot views on social media, Clark has been able to stay focused throughout it all. She continues to inspire future players and advance the game by doing what she does best. Whether some WNBA players want to acknowledge it or not, Clark's effect is indisputable, and those who value quality see it in him. She is supported by defenders like Chris Evert and Gabby Thomas, demonstrating that her impact goes well beyond the basketball floor. Clark is there at the middle of it all, where she belongs, as the game and the conversation change. How do you feel about this whole thing? Do you agree with Clark, or Do you believe the criticism is warranted? As Clark herself would have wanted, let's keep this discussion respectful as we move forward.